someone who has been...
You're saying that gang members do have access to this, but if they've done time for violent offending, then they possibly won't.
Let me answer your question. When we thought about this, we thought about it very carefully, because the reasonable person in New Zealand would expect us to make sure that in the most egregious cases of people who have committed serious sexual and violent crimes, we have another look. They do it in other countries. We are talking about very, very small numbers of people in those countries that end up not getting their payments. We are talking about a certain end of the spectrum. And we know from the Australian scheme, we've had a look at the Australian scheme, we've extrapolated it down to New Zealand, we might be talking about 4 people a year, and those decisions would be made by somebody independent, because we have to maintain public confidence in this scheme, that, you know, recidivist sexual and violent offenders should be taken another look at, and an independent person will make that decision.
Which independent person? Who is it?
We are yet to make those final decisions about who that will be, but it would likely be someone like a retired judge.
Have you made any decisions about the independent people who are going to be overseeing the, where complaints can be taken and that sort of thing?
Those decisions, those steps and those decisions are being made at the moment.
Do you have any idea how many survivors have gone on to become violent offenders?
We know that the proportion, the Australian proportion is about 5.5%. We're very similar. Last time we had a look, it was about 4 to 5%. We don't collect that data regularly, so it's not perfect data, but when we look at what Australia's numbers are, it's very much in line with them. So we're talking about 4 or 5% of people who come forward. We know in Australia that the vast majority of those receive their payments. So it is a very small proportion of a very small proportion of people who may not, who might end up at that with that independent person, either a retired court judge or panel, who make that call in the interests of keeping public confidence in the scheme.
Minister, you're talking about increasing system capacity from 2027. Why is there such a long wait on this?
We are actually increasing capacity from now. You will remember that the Prime Minister made the announcement of $33 million to increase capacity in this financial year. It actually goes up each year. So we went from 1,350 to 1,550. In 26-27 it will go up to 1,800 cases, 27-28 to 2,150. The difficult thing for Cabinet has been that the Royal Commission gave such a wide variety of numbers about people who may come forward, from 30,000 to 250,000. And so we will keep a very close eye on the numbers. There will be a review in 2027 to work out whether or not we need to surge more capacity in. I would also note that it's a relatively specialist skill. This is not transactional. It's not come in, receive your money, we pay it out. The people that are the case officers are listeners. That people want to be heard. They want to be acknowledged that this happened to them. They need to be held, they need to be walked through the process on many occasions. They need access to their care records. Sometimes it can be very re-traumatising, and so it is not a quick process. It is one that requires a great degree of care, and that's why we are committed to making sure we are bolstering numbers over time to get those wait times down, and we'll take another look to see if we need to do that further depending on the numbers that come in.
How do you make decisions about who has suffered the most egregious abuse? What is the assessment, if you like, or breakdown that you've come up with for that?
Look, there's already a framework that each of the individual care agencies use. So social development use one, education uses one, and health uses one as well, and they're all slightly different. And so the work that's going to be undertaken now very quickly is that they will come up with a common payment framework to make sure that no matter where the abuse occurred, that it is, there is equal payment for the type of abuse that's been suffered. It's not an easy thing to do.
Is an independent person going to do that, or is it going to be government officials from the various ministries who make that decision?
We will be making those decisions over the next little while, so it may be a mix.
And you've given the average number of payments. What's the new top level?
Sure. Well, the existing top level is 50,000 plus. Now, with an extra uplift of 50%, that will jump up to 75 plus. There is no upper cap. We acknowledge that there are some very serious, egregious cases, and so there has not been a case, and we are not a cap, and we are not going to implement a cap in the future to acknowledge that there are those cases that may fall into that category.
And when can survivors expect to see these payments actually coming into their bank?
Sure. Well, if we're talking about the top-up payments for the people who've already received their care, they are able to apply for their payments, their top-up payments from today. How quickly they will be paid really does depend on how they're contacting us and how many we get in a short period of time. We are trying to prioritise these, and we are asking people to go to the website if they are able to. If they have access online and are able to do it themselves online, we are asking them to do it that way because it'll be a much faster process for us if they can access online. But in saying that, we do have a phone line set up so that anyone who's got questions who wants to apply can also call in.
Can you just sort of give us a rough idea of the time frame for this though?
Look, I don't want to give any false time frames, but it is something that we are prioritising, and it's not going to be something that's going to take years. We want to do this really quickly.
And why have only a small group of survivors been given a heads up today, and why were survivors not involved in developing these changes?
But we have had 6 years of a Royal Commission report that all relevant ministers have read. The 2,500 people told their stories in that process, and we have read those stories. We have all read the Commission's report, as well as the Redress Design Group's report as well, and the many recommendations. I have met with survivors, I've heard them, I've listened to them over time. This was the time where we needed to make decisions. We've got a wealth of information, both from the Royal Commission and the Design Group, and also survivors themselves. What will happen from here is that I will set up a ministerial advisory group of survivors and advocates to help us with the implementation and also the next phase of work, which is the response to the recommendations, and I will look forward to coming back to you in the next few weeks with that plan.
What's the time frame where people can make a claim?
For top-ups or going forward?
Well, going forward for the redress payments and the top-ups,
they can make claims from today. They can carry on making claims. They've been able to make claims up until today, and they can continue to make claims. The process that we will go through to phase in these changes will be over the next 6 to 12 months, and I'm looking forward to getting a runway map for that in the next couple of months.
Redress decisions, they don't include faith-based organisations or school boards at this stage. Why is that?
It's just really complex. The work that we've had to do to get to this point with just the state system has been extraordinarily complex, and we wanted to prioritise that so that we could announce today with certainty and clarity for survivors. And as I said in my opening remarks, that I know it'll be disappointing for those survivors of abuse in faith-based institutions. I will be receiving more advice on it this year, and we will be making decisions, but at this stage we wanted to prioritise this work.
Would it be safe to assume that because you have not introduced a separate independent redress scheme for state abuse survivors, that you will not be doing that for faith-based survivors as well?
I wouldn't assume anything. There are, as I say, these initial announcements today are for phase one. There may well be different decisions in the future, and we have to Cabinet has to turn its mind now to faith-based institutions.
Can you just explain why it is complex? Because that is one of the core recommendations on all of this, is that, with faith-based abuse, for example, you don't have the Catholic Church investigating a complaint against the Catholic Church, which is what's happening right now. Do you as Minister see that as something that needs to change in the future?
Look, it may well, but for now, as I've already explained, if we were to take that path, it would have taken many years and huge cost. And I'm not convinced at this point in time that it would have been any more responsive, and the risk is that it wouldn't have been, and would have taken all of that time and all of that money after we've had 6 years of a Royal Commission. We've had a year since I've had the report, and then to say, actually, it's going to take us more years and a whole lot more money. I wanted to prioritise to be able to say to survivors today, we have an announcement that means that we will have what will feel like for you one system. There are significant increases in the payments, top-up payments, and we will get through claims faster. That's what I wanted to be able to do today, to provide that certainty and clarity.
But effectively, you're brushing aside the recommendations of the Royal Commission and its work.
Look, there are hundreds of recommendations, and we will be working through those, and I'll be able to come back in a couple of weeks with how we're going to do that.
How many have you met of those recommendations?
I have that to hand if you want to give me a second. There are hundreds of recommendations. I can tell you that of the 105 Royal Commission recommendations, so far 46 have been accepted, 12 in full, 14 in part, and 20 accepted the intent of. 20 have been declined and 39 are under active consideration so far. So there are, but I will be coming back to you because we have turned our mind to what the response to the recommendations will be, and we have made decisions, and I'll be able to come out in the next few weeks announcing what they are.
Can you give us some examples of the recommendations that have been declined?
Look, I don't want to go into that today, and I haven't got all the information to hand today. I want to talk about redress and the investment in the care system, but I'm happy to take that offline with you.
How does current scheme differ to that was recommended in the redress design group?
Look, the redress design group, and I met with them very early on when I became the minister responsible for this area, and I said to them, and they acknowledged that the system that they put forward was very ambitious and very unique, and they knew that. And I did say to them, look, there are going to be aspects of this that we are going to pull out, but I was honest with them and said, this is more ambitious and more unique than I think that we will be able to do. And they knew that. They acknowledged that, and they said, yes, Minister, we know, but we went for what does, in an ideal world, perfect look like, and we know you're not going to be able to do everything, and so we had a conversation about what were some of the aspects that we could do, and that's what we've tried to address today: certainty, clarity, making sure that we are increasing payments, and making sure that depending on where the abuse happened, that the payments, we've got that common payment framework that we're topping up as well, those in the past who haven't been redressed to the same amount. That was important to them as well. So there's a number of things we've taken out of the report that are reflected in this, but I will acknowledge, and I acknowledged with them very early on, that it was very unique and very ambitious.
And have you had a chance to talk to any survivors about what's been announced today and what has the response been?
Not at this stage, but that's something that I will be doing.
One more question.
And how many survivors are you expecting to take up these payments?
Well, we know that there's about 4,500 approximately, 4,900 almost now, survivors that have been redressed in the past that may be eligible for these top-ups. And then moving forward, we have 3,500 in our queue currently, but we expect that to grow, especially after today's announcement. We know that every time we make an announcement, we do get more survivors come forward. Again, it's really hard to estimate what the numbers will be in the future, given the Royal Commission was, the numbers were so wide. But we, as I said, in 2027 we'll have a review where we can see what numbers we've got coming in and what more supports we may need to put in place in terms of the numbers of case officers, for example.
Thank you, Ryan.